Now, one of Kenya's biggest lender today, also the Absa Group, released its 2023 Financial Markets Index report. Now, let's track that for you with excerpts from some of the presentations held today.
One of the key parts of research that we do is this Africa Financial Markets Index with Absa, which, as mentioned before, started in 2017. As alluded to by Jean-Marc, the aim here is to try to better understand how different countries in Africa are able to upgrade their financial market infrastructure to ultimately lead to better economic and financial outcomes. We're very proud and privileged to have the UN ECA formally join us with this project for the first time last year. With their assistance, we were able to add 2 new countries to the index to bring the total to 28, with Cabo Verde and Tunisia. And we would like to continue growing the project, both in its scope, in the number of countries that we include in it, and its importance and its recognition, both on the continent in Africa, but also worldwide, so that policymakers are able to learn from each other to upgrade their financial market infrastructure, but also for market participants to maybe notice some of the developments that are happening in Africa, very important developments which may have flown under the radar.
The Absa Africa Financial Markets Index, in its 7th year, I guess I always want to start out by highlighting kind of what it's not. So it's not about where the highest returns were in 2023. It's not about which country perhaps has the biggest need for capital or where the most capital is going. It's really focused on financial market development. And we think this is really important. Right, we want to generate an environment across the continent where countries are best able to attract capital and well able to put that capital to use. And that's true whether that's foreign capital, which is often the focus here on the continent, how we can bring more money from overseas and get it to work here in Africa. But it's true for local capital just as much. How do we get money from out of mattresses? How do we get money that's being, the store of value is something that's zero yielding, that doesn't generate any jobs here on the continent. How do we get that put to work? Now, there's lots of different ways that a person or an entity could think of this. When we sit down that many years ago to sort of decide how we would sort of help develop this discussion about financial market development across the continent, we focused on sort of 3 broad concepts. We wanted financial markets or the financial market ecosystem to be open. We wanted that ecosystem to be transparent, and we wanted that ecosystem to be accessible. So there's a bit of an editorial angle there, right? So the way we think about the scoring, if a country's setup doesn't encourage open, transparent, and accessibility in markets, the scoring will tend to be less. Now that is, broadly speaking, this was all very important when we started this back in 2017. But since then, if we think of the challenges, the new challenges that have been framing Africa's development and social and economic progress, we've got not just COVID, but then we had the scarring, the economic scarring in the aftermath of COVID. We've got the impact of much higher global rates and the strain that puts on public finances and companies' abilities to raise finance at levels that make projects make sense. And then, of course, there are what we loosely call geopolitical tensions, and whether that be here on the continent or in the Middle East or in Eastern Europe or indeed sort of China versus the West. There's a whole host of those that's making things more difficult for Africa.